pesticide use in the district. I am concerned about the use of chemicals and pesticides getting into the water supply. Will that be covered under the GSP?
Okay, so let's stop there. You wanna address?
So the first comment regarding, conservation for development, regarding drought tolerant landscaping, that is already done through the county.
Right.
The county has very stringent requirements on what type of landscaping you can install.
We can see it over here in the
Yes.
self-help project.
That is basically the culmination of what you can have,
Right.
pretty much. So, I don't think that we need to specifically outline that, because that is a county requirement under the civil engineering.
Yeah, he's asking about for development.
Right, and that's where it's caught in.
So what prevents somebody from buying one of those houses and putting in a lawn? Nothing.
Nothing.
Some are doing
Right. Okay, continue.
But the county requirement, that covers all construction. So if you do a remodel, if you do a new house, a single new house, if you do a
Commercial,
development,
residential.
a housing tract, a commercial development, that covers all of that. You are required to have plants, but they're required to be drought tolerant and
10%.
Yeah.
Even on remodeling?
If you have to get a permit and it involves any of your landscaping, you have to change it.
Rain barrels.
The county has a policy on rain barrels. The problem right now is I would not propose putting a specific section in here for rain barrels or any sort of gray water catchment, because that becomes a cross connection issue. We're not prepared to deal with that right now. It's not readily promoted.
Rain barrels would be cross-connect? That's
It depends on how you use it. Rain barrels are not, but other gray water
right.
collection becomes an issue. If you,
I don't think he's talking about collecting it. I think he's talking about hooking up your washer so it discharges.
and that's gray water, not rain barrels.
Yeah.
Right, I got that. The rain barrels is more of like a termination of your gutter system into it. But then you get mosquitoes, don't you?
Yeah, it becomes a vector problem.
Yeah.
So, which leads to his next thing. But at this point, gray water collection is not highly promoted because of the issue that most of the time it's collected in something that you have to pump out of, which creates the possibility for cross connection where you could be pumping out of that back into the potable water system, which would require us to have backflow devices on all of those properties.
Okay.
So we're not prepared to deal with that right now. As some of these processes become more mainstream and better tested, then we'll probably have some sort of resolution to attach to this ordinance saying this is how we're going to deal with that type of system. But at this point, we don't have a solution.
You haven't put an RP on every service or something.
Everyone had gray water.
And okay, what about chemicals and
Before they
pesticides?
do anything.
Again, the county regulates insecticides and pesticides, herbicides. There's not a lot we can do about the homeowner applying things on their property. The amount that's applied to a homeowner's property generally is pretty minimal.
And it's also gotta be obtainable.
And they're usually getting it from a hardware store, a Lowe's, a Home Depot, something like that. And those are fairly mild in comparison to the ag chemicals. The ag chemicals that you're able to get through a authorized retailer they would be a contaminant if you could get enough of them in one place and dump them into the aquifer or into a lake or something. Again, the county has very strict requirements for that. They have a whole division for that. There's not really a super high need to address it in our water code. I mean, we could always add a section. The last section, or last question he had or comment.
That's regarding fire code, so we'll take that.
No, are you talking about pesticide, herbicide?
Pesticide herbicide?
No, you're talking about number 2?
I was talking about the ag water.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
I hadn't even gotten there.
thought you just answered that. Sounded like it.
Well, he had 2 parts of that third paragraph there.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So that was insecticides, pesticides,
Covered by the GSP?
it's actually not really covered by the GSP directly, but there is comment on it. The standard for potable ag water or even purple pipe water, the purple pipe will be brought back as a separate rider to this policy, probably in a year and a half or 2 years when we have the capability to do it and we have more established idea of what we're actually doing with it. The standard for potable ag water use, right now, we don't have any ag users, so we don't have, that's not set up. We have irrigation for parks and for green belts, but we don't have crop irrigation, which I think is probably what he's looking at. And that's not directly reflected in this. So if that's something that you guys would like to see in it, then we can add it. That's not something that we provide right now, and I think that our cost of water is gonna be prohibitive of somebody wanting to irrigate with it.
So you don't see any ag users coming online anytime in the near future that would require something in the code?
Well, they would have to be within the district,
Right.
and we only have 3 or 4 properties that would do that.
Okay.
One of them's not served by water at all. One of them could have water if they extend the main, and one of them is a vineyard who clearly is not going to take our water.
You talking about Mission Lane area?
Mission Lane area has a couple vineyards in it.
With their own wells?
The ones that have vineyards actually do have their own wells, and they don't get served by the district at all. One property over here on the other side of the self-help project, there's no water line next to them. They would have to extend it pretty far to get there. And the other one is on River Road, on the west side of River Road, and they would also have to extend the line pretty far to get to their property. Out of all of them, that one on River Road is probably the most likely to take district water if it came down to that, but they're in discussion with them, they're not really interested in it either.
This is amendable though, isn't it?
Yeah, any ordinance, you can amend it by resolution,
Right.
and we could always bring it back for a revision.
Is there any public comment or questions on Director Calvin's concerns or the responses that were given to them?
John, we're gonna need to ask Elaine something before you guys do any motions.
Something.
Elaine, can you tell us what we need to do?
So the action we're looking for tonight is a motion for first reading and introduction, reading by title only, an ordinance of the district establishing a water code. So that is the action we're looking for on this item.
It's not approving. John, I guess I'm gonna read two when you get, before you make a motion.
Okay.
Are you ready? You wanna do it now?
Yeah.
Alright, this is to help the public understand this on the ordinance. The first reading, you are agendize a new business, at a regular scheduled board meeting, so this is considered the first reading. A public hearing notice, at least 5 days prior to the second reading, which will be at the regularly scheduled board meeting. A second reading is agendized as a public hearing at the regular scheduled meeting. Adoption of an ordinance. The board can pass an ordinance right after the conclusion of a public hearing. Within 15 days of the public hearing, must publish a summary for the entirety of the ordinance in the newspaper of a general circulation, published and circulated within the district. And then effective date of the ordinance is 30 days after the public hearing. So you have first reading, 30 days later.
So really, so really the effective date is gonna be sometime in May, because we're gonna have the second reading and adoption at the next April meeting, at the regular meeting in April.
So
And that's gonna be the same thing with the next agenda item as well, same schedule.
fire code and the water code.
So do we wanna
Yes,
take corrections to this document now?
Yes, or within 30 days from now until the next meeting, you can get it.
So the
Yeah, so
motion for
corrections
first
can be
reading is
made at
that
this meeting or the
process
April meeting.
where you have 30 days to submit.
Elaine, after this meeting closes
Comment.
and the board sees something, can they email Rob for changes
Yes.
that they see or questions within this 30 days?
Yes,
And that's also the point for public input after they get an opportunity to read it. If they have input that they wanna give, that would be the appropriate time to do that. As well as the
That
next,
doesn't-
as well as the
Yes,
next
exactly.
meeting.
That doesn't necessarily change the document though, it's just,
No.
No, it's just,
Well, if you
let
guys
us know
have,
what you think.
if you guys have comments or wanna see something changed, we can change it before we bring it back. And then from what Blaine just said, we could, if there's something at that point that needs to be changed, it can still be changed.
Okay.
So, again, do you want comments
Yeah.
now, or would you want them by email?
If you could provide them by
we can
email,
do it either way.
that would be easier. If you wanna provide them so everybody in the board can have the same comments, then you can read them now, but I'd still appreciate it from email.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one comment. You said this is mostly for people that are gonna, start building.
No, it's for everybody.
For everybody,
It
right?
encompasses the whole district, but
Are we gonna have, is this gonna be also in Spanish? Cause there's some sections, like section 4, that would be perfect in Spanish for, the Spanish speaking residents to know how the water is conserved.
I do have Spanish water conservation stuff at the front desk
Okay.
for English and Spanish on how to read your meter, how to conserve water, all of that stuff that we promote.
Not for this whole section.
Well, we can do for that whole section, but I have an employee that would, this is a 50 or 60 page, that would take her a long time.
so while this is not currently in Spanish, anything that is sent out to the public as a result of this, or any of the ordinances or policies, is being sent out in English and Spanish.
Okay.
So if we were to enter a drought, then, and the board
Mhm.
elected to instill those, then we would send out notices in English and Spanish.
Okay.
And then she does have other paperwork for conservation in English and Spanish right now. That's not part of this, but it's just in general.
Well, some of my corrections are really more, typing, with the exception of a couple, I have some issues with the language in 2.2.3.1 and 2.2.3.2. Both are the last sentence, and they are specifically related to refunds. It states refunds on money paid in connection with the application are non-refundable, except as provided in section 2.2.5. Well, refunds by nature would be refundable.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that we should change the way that
Mhm.
reads, the language. It could say funds paid in connection with the application, et cetera, as opposed to refunds. If we aren't refunding them, let's not call them refunds.
Yeah.
Just saying.
and,
The rest are, I think, are typing errors.
yeah. Sorry.
I'm sending my stuff to him next.
Yes.
I had 3 people read my minutes and they
You
didn't
do
catch the
work.
Buckman thing.
There are some other typing errors that I can send you by email, but since that is changed to the language, I think it's better if
Yeah.
all the board members and the public hear those changes, or that changes need to be addressed.
Do you have any others?
No, I'll send it out.
I'm gonna take public comment again before we move on. Is there any other public comment on this? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would, like, is there any way the public can get a copy of what we're trying to do here?
Uh-huh.
It's on the website, and you can come in and ask for a public records request.
Yeah, of this,
You can come in and ask for a copy.
yeah, I'm confused.
It's a water code.
Well, I understand it's a water code, but, you know, like, you know, there's a couple of things, and then Guy Kelly here, he mentioned how, you know, we're gonna force this on people, and that was kinda scary. you know, of how to force this on people.
But that
So-
wasn't my intent.
Well, you said it.
Yeah, I remember saying that.
Yeah.
That's not the intent. It's to enforce the code so that we can protect the health and safety of the community.
Yeah, well, I understand that too, but like I said, so I can go in, I can come in here the next day or two and get it.
Absolutely.
Anytime.
You can also go on the website if you prefer that.
I can't even work my phone,
Right, okay.
I do have.
Oh,
but I know
So- So basically, Kelly, are you just saying that you wanna kind of like just look at the codes that are in there right now and see if there's anything that needs to be changed for our environment? Is that what you're saying?
You don't have one.
Well, this code is provided
By the county
as the first
draft?
water code for the district. This has already been tailored towards the district.
From the
So-
state of California, right?
Well, from several places.
Yeah, okay.
So this
But
is-
you're not really gonna, you can try and draft one together
Yeah.
for our
Water code,
community,
right.
right?
That's what
that's
this
what this
is.
is.
Right, okay. So,
Alright,
you,
Thank you. It's basically an outline of how the district operates.
right. But, so, what he's saying is code enforcement. He's not trying to force anything on anybody. He's just saying that if they're gonna get a code enforcement, they just wanna make sure that it's gonna be applicable for all of us.
yeah, well, like I said, I understand that, but when somebody says, well, this is how we're gonna force it on the people, that's
I
kind of
don't
scary.
think he meant it that way. He didn't mean it that way.
Go ahead.
Just gonna wait for it to finish. My name's Scott Young, member of the public. I agree with Director Palafox actually on the bilingual nature of the document, because to have information available retroactively is not as good as having information available proactively. If somebody can be educated ahead of time before the problem arises, they're better off. If it's not too much trouble to create a bilingual document, maybe you should explore
I think
that.
it's just
It's not
staff
all,
time.
yeah, it's not all the sections, there's some sections that just has to do with, the people building the places, like the new, like self-help and all that, but there is, I was writing down, like 4, 5, 6,